The Immortal Game by Aesthetic B. Chapter 16. God. All of them stopped immediately. Twilight Sparkle was dying. Fluttershy and Applejack exchanged looks of equal horror. Pinkie Pie's mane deflated. Rainbow Dash, who'd been speaking with Spitfire, stopped mid-sentence and headed straight for the ground. Rarity's blade disassembled momentarily. The fighting was going well. Twilight's strategy worked out. The Loyalists were going to win, with or without the 5. They could afford to leave now that their side had the major edge. They made this justification long after abandoning the battlefield to make for the palace. They forgave Dash for not being as fast as she usually was. At least, 4 of them did. Her wings were torn and feathers missing in places. Still, Dash labored through the air, ignoring the pain and managing to outrun them by a fair margin. Applejack barreled along at the ground at an alarming rate, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. Taking her a while to accelerate, but she wasn't about to slow down now she had reached her top speed. Pinkie Pie's hooves barely touched the ground as she kept pace with even Rainbow Dash. Fluttershy followed her. Rarity was last, but still running faster than she ever had in her life, than she had ever running for her life. All the while, their connection told him Twilight didn't want to come for her. It was too dangerous, that she could not be saved, but that this was not the end. Ponykind needed them more than she did. And he stopped with growing disbelief just as the steps leading up to the palace began to level out. They looked at each other, faces full of childlike incomprehension. Sudden knowledge that they were not going to save Twilight Sparkle. They already had. Twilight shuddered, tasting her own blood, as the steam walked away from her. She spat it out, then coughed as she struggled to draw breath into her broken lungs. Words. She needed to form words. She managed a hacking sound as more of her vital fluid poured out of her mouth. Applejack. What was that? Esteem asked musically. Titan's avatar quietly observed. Twilight spat out another mouthful of blood, then said in a voice that was quite clear, Theory proven. Applejack. She flopped onto her belly, gritting her teeth from the pain, then struggled all onto 4 hooves, rising out of the pool of her own blood. The point shard of Esteem's blade clattered to the floor beneath her. He really should have kept a hold on it. She kicked the shard with a foreleg and made a trail of blood across the floor. They came to rest at the general's feet. He looked down in disbelief as he stood up straight. You'll be needing that, she told him as the last of the pain from her wounds faded. She reached out with her mind and told the sky fabric to compose her suit and cloak to mend. She took in the palace atrium. Massive pillars ran along either wall, reaching up to a ceiling that was several stories high. Standing in ranks along one side of the room were puppets. Along the other side were ponies. In front of her, Esteem looked speechless. Titan standing next to him looked bored. More puppets? She asked the baffled unicorn. He didn't answer her. Titan did. My son requested a last line of defense. His fear is unfounded and shameful. Intimidation. Pride. Shameful. Yes. You have eaten my daughter, he stated emotionlessly. Twilight done no such thing. The elements of harmony were full of surprises. The element of magic in particular had some interesting bonds connecting it to the others. She had not fully understood them. She hadn't the time to look into them. All she had was a theory. Dying while her 5 friends rushed to her aid had opened the elements to her, just as becoming Twilight Sparkle had. Her theory had been proven correct. Seeing the trick to discovering the secrets of the elements was not study, but friendship. Equinox snapped at a shape behind her as she regarded her opponents. She never did get to use any of those war spells. Intimidation. Pride. All of you, she said, at once. Esteem was the first to answer her. He sped through the air between them in the space of a heartbeat and took a swing of his blade. Twilight was practically useless when it came to blade combat. Rarity was not. She tapped Rarity and met the general's blade in midair of his own. His weapon squealed and shook under Equinox's magical might. The cumulative knowledge of years training under Esteem and over a month under Luna filled her amazing. And she took his look of disbelief with a smile. Then she struck him in the chest with a hoof and sent him sliding across the floor. He slowed to a halt 8 meters away. Pegasus magic, Earth Pony magic, Unicorn magic. The knowledge to wield all 3. Was this what it was like to be a god? Abomination. Titan said levelly as he cast his blade. Destroy her. To their credit, they tried. Once again, Twilight split her mind into parts and delegated. She would need all her concentration to manage her new arsenal. Their advantages? Numbers. Titan got to her first. Their blades met in the air between them. He wavered under the raw power she was able to channel into hers. Titan got to her first. Their blades met in the air between them. He wavered under the raw power she was able to channel into hers. Our advances. Unicorn power. Titan swung a foreleg at her, and her own leg intercepted his punch in midair. She grated her teeth and slowly pushed his trembling limb back. She wanted to know he had nothing next to her. Mastery of Pegasus martial arts. She reached out with her other hoof, twisted Titan's foreleg between her limbs until she heard it snap. Elder God was thrown off balance. Twilight spun into the air and kicked it with both her hind legs. He stumbled back as their blades parted. Whatever it is, Pinkie Pie does. Titan's horn flashed before he caught his footing, and a spear of glossy black darkness sailed through the air towards her. Twilight batted out of the air with Equinox, then ran at him swinging. Titan blocked 3 of her strokes with 2 of her punches before she spun around once more and kicked him with her hind legs. It was almost trivial. A natural strength. She imbued the kick with Applejack's magic, and Titan simply did not stumble backwards. He was thrown through the air and collided with one of the atrium's pillars with a sickening crunch. "What are you waiting for?" Esteem shouted. "Kill her!" Instant translocation, as always. Twilight was behind the general in a flash, and he spun to meet her. Verdon said that he was worth 2 of her at best. Twilight split Equinox into 2 equal parts, then attacked. This time the general had no cheats. This time he had no advances. Skilled with blade. Esteem's eyes widened in shock as Twilight attacked him with competence. They exchanged blows with unnatural speed for several seconds before the enemies in the room began to converge on her. Despite her 2 minds wielding 2 weapons, each equally equivalent in power to his, Twilight didn't break his guard. She would have to use her other faculties as well. Near invincibility. She created an explosive force in the air between them, just as the first soldiers reached them. She would have layered the spell atop itself, causing 2 waves to hit their enemies at almost the exact time. It would have destroyed their Eternals and killed them. But there were true ponies in the room. Twilight was not willing to kill them, especially when she was in no danger. She would definitely deliberately weaken her spells. Esteem threw up a half-formed shield as the blast went off, and was once again sent sliding across the floor. Twilight did not shield at all, and was thrown to the air and back. She landed against the pillar on all 4 hooves, then bent gravity. The world turned to its side as she ran down the column to engage her enemies. Pegasus agility. She hit the ground and cleaved the puppet in 2, while simultaneously bashing a skull with her foreleg. Then she teleported her halfway across the room to face Titan once again. He had recovered from her previous assault. One of her blades met Singularity, and the other went for his face. He ducked under it and rammed a leg into his head with the strength of an earth pony. Titan then snapped upward from the force of the blow, 4 legs leaving the ground. Twilight teleported behind him, sliced his hind legs off with a hoof, then kicked him in the rump. As he wheeled forward and his back struck the ground, slid along the floor. She sprang over 3 meters into the air, then landed over the king as he came to a halt. She drove both of her blades downward, and Titan managed to hold them with a point of dazzling white light for almost a whole second before they went through his eyes. Was this what the gods felt like? Was this kind of the power that they walked around with every day since the moment they were born? Twilight wondered these things as she turned on the puppets and ponies around her. She could not die. This was not a mortal pony alive who could stand against her. Esteem was laughably weak in comparison now. It wouldn't matter how many armies he set against her. She could kill forever with power like this. It disgusted her. No pony should ever be able to simply take and destroy her as they pleased. Not Titan, not Esteem, not her. She moved through Esteem's fodder, and felt like she was pushing her way through a crowd. Magical shields broke like wet paper. Their bodies snapped like twigs. It wasn't long before the true ponies broke form and ran for their lives. She hadn't killed any of them, though there were injuries plenty amongst their numbers. They ran from her, if for good reason. They couldn't possibly hope to harm her. She was a god. Titan appeared for a 2nd time after they had left. "I finally get it," Twilight said to him as he backed half a puppet's face away. "Oh." His face was still an expressionless mask. "Why none of you have taken any direct action." Her blades batted some unicorn offenses away and returned fire, slaying her assailants. Why, all you've done is sit in your forest and observe. What could possibly stand in the way of power like this? There's no contest here. She teleported across the room and went to work on another group of puppets. This would be just a chore to you. So you manipulate and scheme, because it's the only test of skill left. No wonder Celestia is the way she is. All you can hope to achieve is power over us, because you can destroy anything you want with a wave of a hoof. Unicorn Puppet sent a magic missile at her across the room. Twilight looked at a hoof without taking her eyes off the king. The red projectile was thrown back along its trajectory by a wave of kinetic energy. The puppet erected a barrier in time, but it didn't matter. The construct was forced into one of the pillars regardless. Titan answered by tilting his head slightly. I could ask you what it's like to be mortal, to be at the mercy of our game, to know without a doubt you will die before you are ever old enough to attain true understanding. But I do not care. Intimidation, pride. Twilight tore an entire pillar from the wall with magic, then broke it in two. Esteem! She shouted, letting her voice carry out into the palace. Where have you run to now? Nothing can save you from me, Esteem! She brought two massive chunks of stone down on the king, with enough force to level a building. He shielded as the ground around him was obliterated. Not ponies! The ground shook as she beat her pillars against the king once again. With a tremendous crack, they shattered to useless rubble that cascaded to the floor around the unharmed king. Twilight threw her blade at the alicorn. Not puppets! Titan split. Singularity split into 26 parts, and sent them to intercept Equinox. While in the air, Twilight teleported herself and her blade bows behind the king. Not gods! A singularity meant only empty air. Twilight sheared off Titan's head with scissor-like motion, destroying the king's puppet. Quick check showed her that no more enemies remained, so she began sweeping the palace with her magical senses. Esteem would not escape her. She found him on the third floor, heading for the tower which Celestia once slept. With a thought, Twilight appeared in front of him. He stopped dead, so skidding to a hole in the stone floors. I see, he said, simply raising his blade. Twilight's voice trembled as she spoke. The dragon. The dragon. She took a step towards him. His eyes shifted to the side. There was a baby dragon. His eyes grew cold. I did. You said you wouldn't hurt him. I said no such thing. It was implied, she cried desperately. Nihilus left you with a dragon. What did you do with him? Do you intend to kill me, Miss Sparkle? Twilight knew her friends were on the way. She could feel them. They won the battle, or about to move on to Phase 3 of the plan. Amongst them, there was no consensus as to whether Esteem should live or die, but all of them agreed on one thing. Twilight should not have to kill him. Twilight disagreed. If Esteem had to die, then she would be the one to do it. She would not have others kill her enemies for her. She was not Celestia. Yes, she said quietly. She didn't want to be a liar. Her heart fell as Esteem's smile widened. In that case, he said, grinning, dragon meat. He never got to finish his sentence. With an incoherent scream, Twilight leveled the entire corridor and most of the one beneath them. Esteem shielded most of the explosion, but fell through the force floor. Twilight, your mane is looking a little golden there. You might want to get that checked out. He landed in a crumpled heap. Twilight landed next to him in a feat of Pegasus utility. She looked at his battered form, and her legs trembled. Do it fast. This is personal, she said, tears running down her face. I am not following orders! She passed Equinox through his neck, but not to kill him, but to destroy the hold he had on his body. Then she picked him up like he was a rag doll and smashed him into the wall. With a sharp resounding crack, she snapped off his horn and discarded it. I know how I will die, Esteem said weakly, lifting his chin. Twilight sobbed. Everything you hope to accomplish will not come to pass. Everything you accomplished will be thus far will be undone. She grabbed the rubble around her, crushed it to dust. Friends were practically screaming at her through their leak. She will ignore them as he drew from its dust a specific ratio of minerals that heated them into molten temperatures. You will die, and Rarity will not despair! Esteem opened his mouth to speak, and Twilight clenched it shut with a thought. Noisy forced him to bite off some of his tongue as he did so. Her orb of superheated glass drifted over his body as it cooled and took the shape of a sliver. Esteem watched it. Breath quickened. It was a very, very large sliver. You will forever be remembered as the pony who betrayed his kind. And when you die, I will make sure you are remembered as having been hideous! As the sliver finally stopped near his eye, Esteem broke and looked away, jamming his eyes closed. Twilight pried them open and forced him to look ahead. Then she wordlessly pushed her sliver through his eye and let his corpse sag through the floor. When they reached her, she was standing alone, surrounded by 14 shards of platinum iridium that were scattered amongst a pile of ashes. They called her name and surrounded her, asking if she was all right. Twilight was covered in her own blood and dust from the walls she had destroyed, but was otherwise fine. Of course she was fine. She could use their earth pony magic now. She slowly cast a spell to clean herself off, straining her cloak with starlight, feeling strangely numb. Spike is dead, she said, her voice devoid of any trace of emotion. Esteem ate him. Her voice stopped talking immediately. First I looked down and a tear suddenly fell to moisten the ashes below her. Elzak's mouth twisted in rage. Rainbow Dash yelled as she kicked one of the shards on the ground into the night. Pinkie Pie looked like she didn't know how to react. Rarity started wiping her eyes with her hood. If any of you have any objections to my actions, her voice came out raw and unsteady, we will discuss them when I take off this uniform. Until then, I hope we're all this together. She looked at each of them. They all nodded. Rainbow Dash was first. Fluttershy was last. Good. It's time for phase 3. Hyperion is in Celestia's court. It should be easy. Let's help Luna's in position. They didn't say anything on the way to the court. Twilight led the way, and the others followed her wordlessly through the opulent palace. She had to check her place several times as to let the others keep up. When they did reach the tall double doors leading to the court of the sun, Twilight threw them open without preamble. She was done with theatrics. Celestia's court ran with the same design principle as the rest of the palace. Meaning it was enormous. The walls were more glass than stone, as to maximize the amount of sunlight filled in the chamber. A thick red carpet ran through the center of the chamber to a massive cushion. There, Hyperion sat. The prince swallowed as he entered, beads of sweat running off his brow. If you hurt me, he said, his voice shaking, the Titan will kill you! Twilight strode calmly into the center of the room. Do you remember the night you were born, Hyperion? The power that Nihilus gave you? I'm here to take it back. No! He shrieked. He won't want me anymore! Please! Titan is going to die tonight, Hyperion. Nothing you can do will change that. I'll fight you, he said, raising his chin. I'll kill you all! I didn't want to have to do this, Twilight said softly as her friends fanned out behind her. Hyperion's eyes glowed, and the temperature in the room rose drastically. You're all just ponies! He cried, standing. I am a god! His form flashed, and a beam of liquid yellow flame shot through the air towards Twilight and her friends. Twilight could sense that it had within it enough power to destroy not only them, but everything behind them for almost a kilometer. The carpet was reduced to ash beneath it as it closed the distance between them. Twilight opened her eyes as the beam reached her and caught on Equinox. Using the magic of the elements was a strange sensation, unlike any other form of magic she had experienced. 5 other ponies channeled their wills into hers. Together, they gave her an access to a well of immeasurable power. It wasn't power she could bend or control. It had its own purpose. Right now, it was protecting them. That changed when Twilight threw her blade forward, and a massive, incandescent rainbow shot forth to consume the prince's fire. Less than a second, it reached Hyperion. The solar flames gave way to the prismatic beam. The prince screamed with all the power and desperation of a dying star. Luna found Celestia at the center of their old courtyard. Celestia! She landed next to her sister. For the first time, she saw what became of her. Catastrophe! Celestia, what have they done with you? When Celestia saw her, her eyes widened with fear. Titan just left, she said. Terra's here. You need to run, Luna! Luna's eyes hardened as she regarded her sister's broken form. Not this time. She levitated Celestia to her forelegs as she took flight. Not without you! Celestia lunged limply, her face strained with pain. It's good to see you, Luna. Is Twilight Sparkle is alive. Titan flies to his death. As she slipped down over the Everfree, she gave her sister a wink. That was when Terra struck. Her blows had become no weaker since Canterlot. Luna found herself locked in her mother's grasp. Celestia went spinning from her forelegs into the forest below. Hopefully, Twilight's timing was impeccable as she said it would be. Terra grinned as she carried Luna through the air, back into the broken-down palace, where she pushed her through a stone wall and into the floor. Her mother pinned her to the ground and gave her beautiful smiles. Then Luna's head into the stones beneath her. The stones beneath her were pulverized to the dust, and her vision turned black momentarily. "Over a month," she said in her magnificent voice. "It took you over a month to come to her rescue. Do you have any idea how little entertainment I get from your sister? She doesn't play any of the games I like." Luna narrowed her eyes and spat blood at her mother. Luna knew exactly what games she was referring to. Terra had been the one to teach her to make war, and her lessons had been harsh. With a powerful motion, Luna swung back up onto her hooves. She cast the deer and lunged at her mother. It was a futile gesture. Terra was much stronger than her, and probably more skilled as well. She was beaten to the ground again by a ripple of telekinesis before she even spread her wings. "I didn't want her!" Terra hissed. "You were the one who betrayed me. You're the one I owe. Tell me, do you want to marry your new brother?" Luna looked up at her mother, defiant. "Never!" Terra gave another one of her gorgeous smiles. "Then I suppose I'll have to away with you after all, won't I? I have so many little activities planned. Try not to break too soon." Luna struggled to her hooves. She couldn't hurt her mother physically. She had to try it psychologically. "What did he do to thee, Terra?" Terra's expression darkened immediately. "I told you, Luna!" she spat. Took a stone as big as she was, tore itself from the wall beside them. Luna braced herself for the impact. The stone shattered over her body. The force of the impact depressed her into the floor. "Never ask us questions!" Her earth-plumbing magic came more slowly this time. Luna lay immobile for a long while before her mother. When she finally gathered enough strength to lift her head, dust shifted off it in waves. When she spoke, her voice sounded strained. "Well," she breathed in a mouthful of dust, and spent time coughing it up. "Thou art a monster. A terrible monster. What could Titan possibly done?" Terra crossed the short distance between them, and Luna tasted blood as her mother brought a hoof across her face. Still, she continued. Pain was not much of a hindrance to one of Terra's daughters. "Not one thing," she said weakly. "Instead, it was centuries of being his wife, wasn't it?" Terra laughed. "You know so little," she said in a voice that was almost a whisper. "I am what he needs me to be, and so I survive. Any pony can become what they need to be, and given enough time." Luna turned away from her insane mother. "And you need to be torturing your daughters?" Terra leaned down and nuzzled Luna on the neck. "No," she said, "I don't." Luna jerked her head away. "Spare me the suffering," she said forcefully. "Help me in my fight against Titan. Thou didst go against him before!" "And I lost," Terra said darkly. "Thanks to the daughters we gave to the world. Celestia has been singing the same song for the past month. I'm going to have to decline." Luna turned her head and looked through the gaping hole in the stone wall, and it marked their point of entry. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. There were 6 hours left before the dawn. "I was not asking thee to spare me," she muttered. Terra cocked her head. "I was giving thee a chance to spare thyself. Goodbye, mother." The power came to her, wrapped with a thought that was not her own, much like a ribbon bound around a parcel. She had been dying in the dirt, surrounded by the uncaring trees of the Everfree forest. The fall had broken everything that there was left to break. She hoped that Luna didn't feel guilty for dropping her. Terra was to blame. It wasn't fair. Celestia had always known she would die. It was essentially the first rule of being immortal. In the grand unraveling of time, anything could come to pass. If time was infinite, anything would come to pass, including any number of possible deaths. If time wasn't infinite, well, then the end of time would certainly kill her. But this was not the way she had imagined it. Her fight with Titan was much closer than she would have liked, going out in a blaze of glory against a superior foe, even as she engineered that foe's defeat. Instead, she was bleeding out in the dirt, not like a god, like a pony. Twilight was alive, so Titan would still lose. She was surprised to realize that knowing she wasn't Ning brought comfort to her. Hopefully Twilight would forgive her after she was gone. The fact that the mare had gone through the silver of darkness because of her was not lost to Celestia. There's still plenty of other reasons Twilight had to hate her. Celestia wondered how many of those he had found. That was when the power came upon her. It was like being submerged in a vat of pure sunlight. Involuntarily, Celestia's broken body buckled and shook in the dirt. Suddenly, she realized why Luna had winked. Clever girl. She was back in the immortal game. Twilight's voice resounded in her mind, perfectly clear. Princess Celestia. Those 2 words were enough to tell Celestia she was dreaded. Or perhaps it was just the lack of one word. Dear. She doubled over again and heard a series of snaps as her bones began to reshape themselves. I have retaken Canterlot and slain the traitor General Esteem. The sentence was fit to burst with new information. Twilight retook Canterlot. Not by herself, obviously. Was meant that Master Stroke had gone forward with the rebellion as planned. Esteem had become Titan's general, which means that he was indeed the traitor. Likely even the unicorn who had broken Titan's bonds. And Twilight killed him. Her back split open. Newborn wings of blood and sinew tore their way out from her form. Blood ran down her forehead in rivulets as an alabaster horn pushed its way through her skull. If there was pain, Celestia didn't feel it. She was busy drowning in her power. Twilight had killed Esteem, Verity's biological father. What had made her student into? She was getting larger. She had been from the start. Her mane growing back in, injuries of over a month were healing in seconds. Celestia felt herself grinning widely as feathers blossomed over her newborn wings. Has she always been this strong? A month of being mundane certainly put things in perspective. You are to King Queen Terra, so that the war ends today. Kill Terra. The order, for that most definitely what it was, confirmed her theories about Twilight. I killed Rarity's father. You're going to kill your mother. Celestia would carry it out. She felt like stretching her new muscles anyway. Ends today. The wording was not lost on the princess. She found Twilight's success agreeable, and told the sun to take possession of high noon. Master, General, Twilight Sparkle. The fact that Twilight was most likely despised her was almost enough to deepen Celestia's mood. Almost. She threw herself into the air, spinning as she felt wind through her feathers for the first time in over a month. She tapped into her unicorn power, was almost overwhelmed by the flood of energy that offered itself to her will. Another beat of her wings sent her downward. She smashed through the roof of the palace like it was made of fog. She had no royal regalia, so she had to improvise. She summoned a mass of white earth pony warplate to encase her body. A small thought, and upon her brow burned a crown of liquid flames. She drew Zenith, then leveled it at her mother, who had been staring at her in disbelief from 20 meters away. Celestia spoke with the unsuppressed voice of our god, and resonated throughout the entire palace. Centuries of boiling water for tea when I knew I could boil the seas. Lifting quills when I could lift mountains. Of breaking wax seals when I could break anything I please. My power is too much for this world. But it isn't too much for you, is it, Terra? Now I get to find out what I'm really capable of. No lives to save, no plans to make, nothing holding me back! I am Divinity Unleashed. Terra took a step back, away from the beaten form of Luna. Her mouth hung open in amazement. Celestia, she said dumbly. Celestia smiled wickedly. Call me Sunshine. You know, folks, reading this fic again for the 3rd time, I have come to realize what this is. This is basically what happens when you take away Twilight's modesty and Celestia's desire to hold back and to give their enemies a chance to actually strike. This is what happens when everybody's not confined by the rules of a TVY 7 or a PG rating. Thank you, and come again. This is also what happens when Twilight does not allow her modesty to hold her back. Twilight, staring passively at Empyrean, was now a mundane pony. He was perfectly fine, though what she could gather, stripping away his power had been somewhat painful. She would rather not have been, of course. Empyrean was just a victim of his upbringing. He never had a real enemy, like Titan or Terra. He's... First I sounded appalled. Just a cult. A child. The corridor's sun was a bit more magnificent now as daylight out. A dull light, weakened by the looming storm cloud, dabbled in through the semi-transparent windows that stretched up through the ceiling. Everything else was made out of marble. It would be picturesque, were it not for the asses scattered about the room from when Empyrean burnt away the carpet. Empyrean was crying, "Look what you did to me!" His head was buried in his four legs, facing away from them. "I'm nothing now!" Twilight ignored him. It had to happen, Fluttershy. Not only to give Celestia the strength to kill Terra, but to get the Titan to come here. Fluttershy flew to the former prince's side. "But what will happen to him?" Twilight had no idea. "Celestia will see to it that he gets a new home. He'll be safe." Titan was hopefully on his way, just as Twilight had planned. Empyrean was stronger than Terra, so sending Terra to defeat the force that had defeated his son would be a senseless act. He would be throwing his wife away. Twilight knew that Titan was a sensible pony. He would be on his way. "There, there." Fluttershy was trying unsuccessfully to call the Twilight Prince. "You don't have to do what your father tells you anymore." Empyrean sniffled. You mean I won't have to raise the son?" Fluttershy flashed him a reassuring smile. "Not at all. You can do the things a pony your age is supposed to, like fly." He wiped his nose. "And Esteem won't yell at me?" "No, Esteem won't yell at you." "What about my father?" "He won't either. Celestia is going to take care of you from now on." "You can't kill him," Empyrean said glumly. "He's invincible." Fluttershy frowned and opened her mouth to speak again. Before she could, Twilight interrupted her. "He's here," she said quietly. She could feel him approaching even without her magical sentences. "He's here!" she shouted to her friends. "Spread out! Now! Fluttershy, get over here! Empyrean, run!" The prince didn't listen. Twilight cursed inwardly as Fluttershy flapped her way over to where they stood and took her place behind Twilight. It was time to kill the king of the world. Titan's arrival seemed to break the sky. There was a thunderous crack, and the ground beneath shook. Outside, the massive storm cloud that her Pegasi had summoned over to keep was blown back by an equally massive expanding white ring. Twilight felt the elder god descending upon them. It was like being in a collapsing mine, thousands of stone bearing down her to plunge her into an airless darkness. Her only instincts were screaming at her to run. She heard her friends shifting uncomfortably, and knew that they felt it too. Blanket mind magic, fear and helplessness, and the fact that he could conceive of and cast such a spell was as terrifying as the spell itself. Should her magical armor be preventing it from affecting them? Titan knew exactly where they were, as Twilight suspected. The white ring that torn through the storm cloud seemed to be directed above them. Seconds later, after they heard the explosion, Titan broke through the ceiling. He hit the ground with the force of a meteor, and above him, the roof split and caved. Shattered stone rained down upon them. Strangely, none struck the king himself, though he manipulated them with telekinesis. Twilight was glad for the enchantments they all had on their armor. She reached out and shielded Empyrean to protect himself from the blast. In the center of the room, Titan was perfectly still. Though his oppressive mind magic still had a hold on them all. When he rode, the motions were flawlessly mechanical, like an automaton winding down. He folded his wings behind his back and looked at Twilight. Instantly, the fear inside her doubled. It was almost animalistic in the way it screamed at her over her greater senses. She wanted to turn and run, flee from this terrifying immortal predator. She was an insect he wanted to crush. She needed to hide under a rock. No wonder Titan considered ponykind to be semi-intelligent animals next to alicorns. His presence alone could reduce them to such. Twilight began to craft a spell in her mind that hoped would counteract his crippling mind magic. That was when Titan spoke. No. If his presence was fear, his voice was insanity. He had spoken the word very loudly, yet it felt as though she was running her face into a concrete wall. She had to fight to cover her ears. What was more, her spellcrafting just stopped. One moment she was working the magic with her mind, and the next she held on to nothing. He had taken it from her, and his horn hadn't even glowed. No wonder he had been able to sneak up on her, stab her earlier without knowing. Apparently for a 3,000-year-old alicorn, the rules didn't apply. "Father!" Empyrean cried. Titan turned and regarded his son for a moment. His mouth became a thin line, trembling with rage. "Pathetic," he said simply. Then, with a violent twist and a loud snap, he broke Empyrean's neck with magic. His son's lifeless form stung to the floor. Beside her, Twilight heard Fluttershy try to stifle a whimper. Titan spoke to her again, and around her, Twilight's friends cringed.
I have had enough.
A wave of force traveled outward from the king and struck Twilight and her friends head on. It didn't let up, and they were thrown back against the wall as the ashes and rubble were pushed away as well. The windows shattered, and their shards of glass fell into the warm summer afternoon air. The force persisted, dwarfing gravity itself. From her perspective, Twilight looked up at King Titan. You see, this is the Titan I know and love. This is how you do a villain. She could have probably killed him then and there. They weren't exactly coherent enough to use the elements, not under the effects of his voice and presence. There was no way with that kind of power he had wouldn't be able to. Instead, he spoke as they lay pinned to the wall.
I have had enough of this rebellion. Enough of your attempts to outplay me at the Immortal game. Enough of ponykind denying its place in the natural order.
His voice sounded harsh.
My leniency is at an end.
Twilight needed to break his spells, but trying to use her magic was like trying to hold water in her hooves. It shied away from her as he told it to take shape in her mind. How was he doing it?
Do you think that it is right, he spat, to oppose me? Do you think that I am wrong to ensure ponykind follows the natural order? Do you think that these matters are yours to decide, as though you could possibly see this world in a way I do not? As though it would matter?
The force acting on her body increased. I began to feel an echo of the same pain Titan had forced upon her before. There was no way she could focus enough to cast, even without the way he was making her magic reject her. She looked up at the king from under the crushing weight of his spells. Cracks ran along the stone floor beneath him as his rage came to a boil.
I am Titan!
He said in a voice that was like a voice like thunder.
Master of all that is and shall be. You cannot rightly oppose me, because I define morality itself. By very nature I am right. By my very nature I cannot err.
Twilight was not going to let her friends die as insects being tortured under a microscope. So could not everything have been for nothing? Desperately, her mind ran through a list of options. She split her mind and piled all the pain, fear, and oppression into her second consciousness with a hastened, sorry, that focused on her magic. She had to free her friends. Again, it drifted from her grasp like smoke. Frustrated, Twilight piled more and more of her emotions to her other mind, until she felt herself drifting through the cold, liquid-like state of pure logic. This time, she was able to grasp a tiny bit of magic. She thrust it into Titan's spells like a tiny sliver, slowly using her superior concentration to add more and more power. As she worked, she felt the pain in her second mind ease up, found herself able to hold more and more magic. She was succeeding. She had undone the spells Titan had on herself. She set both her minds to crafting the magic she would need to set her friends free as well. Titan carried on.
You set yourselves against me, as to say you are capable of hindering me in any way. You are not. There's nothing you can do that I cannot undo. I could stand in this room and do nothing as you die of old age.
Twilight's first spell unbound every one of her friends from Titan's spells and shielded them from his crushing forces. Before they could fall away from the wall, her second spell teleported every one of them and herself to stand in front of him. Titan only took a moment to look somewhat surprised before Twilight breathed venomously, "Get him!" Her friends did not need to be told twice. One by one, Twilight felt them gather their bearings and tap their elements, channeling their mysterious power to her. Rainbow Dash was first. The bond connecting her to the element of loyalty churned and boiled like a summer storm, and Equinox formed into a six-pointed star before her. After Dazzle's rarity, the power held by the element of generosity was unlike the primal might that described loyalty. First it seemed weaker. The cool sense of focus came with it was certainly nowhere near as strong as the thunderstorm of might that came with Dash's comprehension. Naturally, it was simply different. Magic woven into a million delicate forms. The power that rarity gave to Twilight was beautifully complex. Laughter was next. It washed over Twilight, and she immediately felt a renewed sense of confidence as a warm, glowing strength filled her. It, too, was totally unlike the others. It felt more like sunlight on her smiling face than a work of art. Suddenly, Twilight felt reassured. Titan was so scary, not to him. Honesty was a straightforward link through which Twilight was granted even more power. Unlike the seething energy that came with loyalty, Honesty's might hardly seemed to move at all. It was like a mountain, solid and ancient, entirely immutable. Twilight opened her eyes, which she vaguely remembered closing at some point, felt them burn with a growing magic inside. She would have been able to identify Fluttershy's contribution even if the Pegasus hadn't been the last point to connect. The magic granted by the element of kindness was the magic of life, pure and simple. Twilight couldn't describe what made her recognize the power, other than the fact that she was alive. Aside from the material composition, it was what set her apart from a stone or a chair. Finally, Twilight called upon the magic itself, and energy came to her like an old friend. Apart, the power provided by the elements was unique. Together, it was universal. Twilight she knew she held in her mind a sample of the energy that ran through her everything existed ever. Titan's supposed dominion. They were lifted into the air. 6 friends who had been through war and faced it together. 6 friends who had came out beaten and scarred, but still friends. All of them worked together to give power to Twilight, who told it what she needed it to do. It wasn't anything like unicorn magic. He didn't need a mental capability or focus to direct it. It simply obeyed her wishes. And it did so eagerly. The room itself shook as the elements allotted more power than they ever had to in the rainbow of pure energy that thundered towards the king. Titan stared on, his face not comprehending the situation until the second it struck him, at which point he uttered a single word. No. All the color went out of the world. A rainbow beam of energy froze as it became a slur of gray and black. The light coming in through the windows changed from a golden yellow to a harsh white. Before her, the 6-pointed gem that represented the element of magic became a clarky glass imitation. Centimeters away from Titan, the beam shattered to 1,000 tiny fragments that rang as they struck the floor. Twilight fell out of the air. She didn't have any time to second-guess her next move. She had done plenty of second-guessing beforehand. She reached into her mind, probing through the now inert elements of harmony. There was one connection that was different than the others. It was a twisted, knotted cord of magic that pulled the power away from the element of magic, rather than giving it the power to it. With the haste of a pony too afraid of what hesitation might bring, Twilight snapped it. All aspects of her plan had a plan B. Even this one. The broken fragments of the previous attack had all dissipated. Silence filled the aromatic core of the sun. Titan stood from her entirely unharmed. He spoke in a very quiet, low whisper that was devoid of godhood. "You dare," he muttered. Twilight could hear him only because there was no other sounds in the room. "You dare!" he boomed, once again assuming the resonating voice that came with being an alicorn. He crossed the distance between the two of them, faster than Twilight could see, then battered her across the room with a foreleg. Twilight felt several of her bones break, despite her armor, as she was thrown across the room to collide with the back wall. She sagged down and landed next to Hyperion's corpse. Across the room, Titan emitted a thunderous wave of force that scattered her friends before appearing in front of her again. Sword and flashed, and Twilight was trapped immediately in a tangled mess of tortured white cord. She tried to undo them with magic, only to find the task virtually impossible. This was not Titan's avatar. This was Titan himself, and counteracting his magic was nigh impossible. "You dare use the magic of harmony against me!" There was a sickening crunch that sounded altogether too close to Twilight. The pain shot through her forehead. Titan's mane reached out and grabbed her face, thrusting it upward until she was looking directly into his eye. She felt a trickle of blood run down her face. "You have taught me something today, Pony. This is no small feat." Her horn, she realized with a pang of dread. He ripped her horn off, like a colt pulling wings off a fly. "Before now, I thought you ponies a faded shadow of the will and soul of an alicorn. But I was mistaken." Okay, that's it. We're dead. Everything's gone down to crapper. Tune in next week when we present to you another fanfic. Diddles. Do you think they left? Okay, back to the awesome. His head snapped around. And past him, Twilight saw Rainbow Dash shooting through the air toward the king. Titan's horn flashed, and there was a scintillating crunch as Dad was pummeled into the floor by an unseen force. Titan turned back to Twilight coolly.
You feel and desire as we do, don't you, Twilight Sparkle? There is just as much inquinity in each of you as there is in me. How monstrous! Inquinity is a terrible thing to live with. How do you bear it? Each of you, powerless and dying throughout all your lives. Each of you, wanting, loving, and hating, but so young you could not possess true knowledge. His voice was overpowering, and Twilight could not help but hear every word he spoke, despite the pain it caused. How are you not crushed under your own insignificance? Titan mused. How do you live when you know you will die? How can you look upon the world with anything but fear when you know you are unable to change it? Singularity slipped into existence behind Titan, a simple life of unwavering darkness. The air around it seemed to distort. Twilight felt a tug coming from the weapon. Even you, Titan whispered, eyes wide, the greatest of your kind, and wielder of the magic of harmony, are nothing before me. The blade came toward her. Twilight teleported. She landed softly on the floor at the other side of the room, and immediately her mind had reeled. She hadn't teleported herself. She didn't have a horn anymore, which meant that an ice cream sundae popped into existence before her. It was a decadent dessert. Ripples of butterscotch throughout the mounds of vanilla cream. Hot fudge drizzled over cherries and blueberries. Banana slices and pecans garnishing the edges of a bowl. Stuck to the side of the sundae was a small note. Each letter written perfectly in a different typeface. You've earned it. Titan rolled onto her back to see Titan standing over her. It felt a strange click followed by a familiar weight on her forehead. The elder god looming before her from Twilight to the ice cream to her newly healed horn, then spoke in a godless voice that was barely above a whisper. If there was any hope for redemption for your race, it is gone now. You will die by the thousands. This is unforgivable. You should see the look on your face, audience. Priceless! Laughter rang throughout the chamber, echoing off the walls despite the fact that every window had been shattered. Twilight looked up at Titan, eyes burning with defiance, as she slowly used her newly restored magic to raise the spoon to her mouth and take a bite out of her ice cream. It was delicious. Titan turned to look on Sarah in a room where the new arrival sat on a tiny table set for two, drinking tea. Your daughter is on her way. Boop! He said as he set the teacup down. The entire table burst into flames. Until then, Discord said lightly, as his freakish face was bathed in a flickering firelight. We have so much catching up to do, don't we, Order? Man, Discord! There, you see, my little pirates? This is how you introduce Discord! Thank you. Victory goes to this Vic. Terra didn't fight Celestia. She had taken one look at her ascended daughter and fled, leaping into the sky to chase off to the direction of Canterlot. Celestia cursed her judgment and followed. She'd been certain Terra would engage her. Hadn't her mother said she believed herself to be stronger than Celestia when it came to combat? Apparently even Terra knew that was only boasting. They each broke the sound barrier with a pair of thunderous cracks! Celestia cursed her flight capabilities. As princess, she didn't often go flying, and the month of inactivity was weighing on her. Terra was gaining a considerable lead, despite Celestia's slight age disadvantage. It made sense. Luna was always a better flyer than Celestia, and Luna had been raised by Terra. The friction in the atmosphere around Celestia ignited the air. She began to trace a blazing trail across the sky as the edge of the Everfree passed beneath her. Nostrils were filled with the scent of ozone. She looked ahead to see that Terra had gotten closer. Apparently, Celestia's knowledge of flight was coming back to her. Still, several hundred meteors separated her from the green and gold speck that was her mother. Beyond her loomed a titanic mountain that sheltered the city of Canterlot. They had covered a great deal of ground. Celestia hadn't ever flown this fast. She wondered briefly if Titan ever pushed his abilities to see what he was capable of. As undisputed rulers of the world, what would need of either of them had to practice their art? Even as a child, Terra taught them how to use their innate magic. Titan dealt exclusively with the matters of state and manipulation.
Celestia realized she wasn't going to catch Terra before she reached Canterlot, despite her age advantage. It irked her somewhat that Terra was better at focusing her Pegasus magic than her, but she knew she still had an advantage when it came to raw power. She also doubted that Terra was anywhere near as potent as a spellcaster as she. Terra dipped in toward the palace, as Celestia expected she would. Just as the distance between them began to close, Celestia wondered what compelled Terra to come to this particular spot. It could be a trap. Perhaps Titans survived Twilight's plan and her subjects were dead. It was entirely possible he held some way of communicating with his wife, and he called her to that particular spot. So Celestia was already dead. She might be able to evade Titan from a distance, but if he was in a city, she would not be able to escape him. She might be able to burn the air around her with the speed of flight, but Titan hardly needed to flap his wings at all. Perhaps, Celestia hoped this was the case, Titan had been slain, and Terra would simply run to the last place she had known him to be. She smiled grimly at the thought of Terra landing and finding nobody to protect her. Her mind ran through a dozen scenarios, all with outcomes that fell somewhere between the two. For all of them, her best or only course of action was to follow her mother. She angled herself to descend after Terra as the other gods made for the Court of the Sun. Her court had seen better days. The windows of most of the ceiling were gone. The ground resembling was strewn with rubble. Terra went in fast, hit the bare stone floor with a surrounding impact, and was skidding to a halt. Celestia followed her, banking in so that she landed from the other side of the room. Then she took in the situation. The entirety of her court was bare. Not a single fragment of glass or stone marred its austere appearance. The carpet was inexplicably gone. This she took in with a glance. What was more pressing was the room's occupants. Across the chamber, Terra slid to a halt next to Titan, who appeared very much alive and unharmed. Celestia was positioned in front of Titan and 5 friends, who were still alive somehow. Poised on the floor next to her, wearing a trickster's grin, was Discord! Terra spat with more venom than Celestia had in her voice. In a moment, Discord slid into the air between himself and Terra coiled his body around her. Terra! He said cordially as he placed a furry paw beneath her chin. Still. He placed his claw beneath his own chin as he seemed to search for the words to finish the sentence. Daddy's little girl. Daddy? Terra was Titan's daughter? Celestia's father called her. Celestia. She gave him a very slight nod. Titan? With a sickening fluid motion, Discord coiled across the room to stand beside Celestia. I saved your Twilight Sparkle, he said. Aren't you proud of me? Titan was going to kill her! Celestia looked back at Twilight, who was wearing some of the sky. Twilight looked away. It hurt. Not just because Twilight hated her. She had a good reason to, after all. Ooh, I could so totally see if Sunset, Starlight, and Tempest were part of this. Tempest would have been beaten by now, and Sunset and Twilight would start having a little argument between one another about Celestia's ways, and both of them would start arguing about which was better. Rather, it hurt because Celestia had failed her. The entire conflict was the result of one moment of fullest mercy on her part. I should have killed you, she whispered. You should have killed me, Titan agreed. But you were not a worthy successor. Your equanimity betrayed you. Discord chuckled, then appeared behind Titan in a flash. But there were so much better things to do with your enemies, he said airily. Then the Draconic reached down and picked up the broken corpse of an infant off the floor, wrapping his claw around the tiny head with ease. Wouldn't you agree, Order? Or shall I call you Titan now? Titan was silent as Discord blew the dead child's mane out of his face. His smile curved back into a sneer. Let me guess, he said. Empyrean, isn't that cute? He appeared next to Celestia. Enough was enough. Twilight had increased Discord. The rest of her plan was obvious. It was time to observe the final protocol of the Immortal game. Titan, Celestia said evenly, I declare myself and my sister sovereign rulers over all Equestria. Titan was passive expressive and didn't change as the air before him rippled and churned, then turned to an inky black. The withering darkness coalesced into a glossy black breastplate, was to fix itself to his chest. You intend to fight me for control? If I have to, she answered. Another fragment of the king's armor was wrought for nothing, and attached to his back with an echoing clang! Terra. Terra had not stopped daring daggers at Discord. Yes, father. Titan was now covering his legs with a contract war plate. You will kill Celestia, he said simply. Terra looked at Celestia, and her mouth twisted into a grin. Yes, father. Celestia turned to look. Discord. She had to suppress the urge to shudder, as the Draconicus wrapped himself around her, whispering in her ear, Yes, Celestia. Titan and Terra are our mutual enemies. I suppose they are, aren't they? I propose a temporary alliance until they have been dealt with. Discord let out another funky chuckle. I thought you'd never ask. I accept. He slithered back to his place beside her. Temporarily, of course. As I said before when we did My Little Pirates, this is how you do discard. Again, Celestia had to resist the urge to shudder. A world under Discord was arguably just as bad as a world under Titan. The Chronicles had no doubt intended to double-cross her once Titan was dead. Still, they had dealt with him before. Better the devil they knew. Discord rubbed his paw and claw together as he spoke to Titan. I am going to make you feel, old friend. I am going to make you feel everything. Titan drew singularity, and Celestia immediately felt it tugging on her. I am going to unmake you, he intoned mercilessly, as Canterlot is an asset to all of us. I would like to put forth the Dark Heart of the Everfree Forest as a suitable occasion to start with. Just how much power were Titan and Discord capable of throwing around? The mountain? It is now a plateau, was her father's answer. Apparently that much. Well then, Discord said lightly, I suppose we got to get started. If every pony and every Draconicus is ready. He just slithered to the end of the room, wrapped himself around Twilight, and gave her a look that made Celestia feel sick. I'll be seeing you again, he said softly. Discord snapped, and they were gone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why Discord is awesome. That is all. Ugh, that was a scary thought. What if Aesthetic B threw in T-Rex of all people into this? You rang. No, you don't! You just want to make things worse! Down, down, down! Go,